Joining me today over a coffee at the Office Cafe in Brussels, Tanja Fajon, Social Democrats Vice President. We talk about migration, populism and the Balkans. Tanja Fajon, thanks for joining us today. In a moment where migration is really pushing every agenda in Europe, are you optimistic we're going to get something sorted?
No, I'm not optimistic, though in the European Parliament we really managed to make quite some breakthrough on many legislative files. We are really trying to build an efficient migration and asylum policies as regards Dublin reform, as regards strengthening the outside borders. But the problem really lies in the governments of the EU. Currently, as it looks like, the EU summit will not deliver any positive results, and I'm very concerned because that can lead to much more difficult migration policy in the future, and also possibly it will have an effect on the Schengen system. So I think it's high time to act for the EU governments to be aware, to be wise enough to see that much is at stake. Migration will continue. Europe is a continent of migration, and fences and borders will not stop migrants fleeing to Europe or refugees fleeing. Today is a refugee day. So I do hope that we will manage to make some managing migration an effective policy.
Do you think the European governments will wake up now that Angela Merkel's leadership is actually at risk because of migration?
It is seriously risk, especially what is happening today in Germany. Angela Merkel maybe can even lose the government in the next 2 weeks. What would that mean for the future of Europe? I don't want to think. So I do hope that Angela Merkel, who is now really trying to persuade also the European leaders that a lot is at stake, will succeed. Now there are many bilateral meetings between Germany, France, Italy and so on. But what is also concerning is the fact that they are discussing about the reception centers in Africa or outside of...
Is that such a bad idea though, given that logistically it's safer to have migrants organised on the African side if all the humanitarian elements are met?
I would ask you how that can work. We discussed humanitarian visas. Yes, it was not used to the extent we wish to see. But a reception center with the EU personnel, do you really believe people will go there, knock to the door and say, I'm here, I would like to register for asylum? I'm afraid that it will look like people getting stuck in some centers for another year in a limbo situation, not knowing really where to go. I don't think that this idea precisely on the table is now really efficient.
And Salvini and the march towards an even more authoritarian approach to migration, where does that land?
Very concerning. Just see what he did in the last few days, not only with the boat Aquarius. I understand Italian frustration because we don't have an effective migration policy. But for example, a step further he did is he's questioning the citizenship of Roma population. This is something which reminds on, I would say, even on back in the history, very painful experiences when we were ghettoizing or excluding some kind of people that we didn't want to have in our society.
But we have this march towards a stronger form of populism, and there doesn't seem to be a coherent pushback against that. Are you concerned that next year's elections are going to be a wipeout for the centre ground?
In fact, we are damaging ourselves with our rhetorics. What is happening, if we don't have an efficient European policy, an efficient migration of outside border, that means that populism is on a rise. The politicians that are today running nationalist or populist rhetorics are actually winning, and they are winning the ground. This is what is my concern. On one hand, you see statements of politicians creating fear among population, people are fleeing to Europe. The numbers are not that high currently, but it's more to managing this fear with very populistic politics.
You worked as a journalist before you went into politics as well, so you've seen both sides of this operation in the communication sphere. What's the problem? Why are centrist politicians, pro-European politicians, not able to cut through with their message?
It's the question I put to myself every day. I myself am faced with a lot of hate speech when I speak about migration. I really try my best to pass this message through. It's about humanitarian or human response when it comes to refugees. We need European response. We need a global response. It's not a matter of one country or these politicians we see today in many governments, in Austria or in Italy, in Hungary, are running a very dangerous short vision policy that I really am hopeful that with more wisdom we will manage. Now we have also intellectuals, writers, artists. Recently we had a lot of networks in Brussels trying to make people understand. Those policies we are trying to build for Europe is to protect our integration and to make also Europeans feel safe and bring economy back, bring jobs back, and also use these people that will stay, migrants in Europe, that they are well integrated in our society, so it can be beneficial for both sides.
The constant shift in our economy as well, we're not dealing with a huge economic crisis right now, but the move towards Industrial 4.0 has the potential to be even deeper than the Eurozone crisis, the loss of jobs, the reorientation of the industrial sector. If that happens quickly, is Europe finished?
I don't want to be too pessimistic, or because pessimism doesn't resolve the questions and problems we have. But it's of course a challenge, but it can be also an opportunity if we manage how to tackle with industrial revolution. Also what is happening with globalization, I think all that has a tremendous effect on us as citizens, how to really survive in the time that we are bombarded with news from everywhere, with the fake news, with digitalization. It is something that is a challenge for us, but on the other hand, Europe is still the continent of very high values and standards. I wouldn't be that pessimistic. We just need somehow to remind ourselves why, on which basis this Europe was built.
Social Democrats, of which you're part, have suffered a lot of heavy losses and leadership issues over the last couple of years, and now you have Pedro Sanchez in Spain. Are you optimistic that he can deliver something the others haven't been able to do?
Currently, yes. Currently there is a lot of optimism also in Spain. I was very proud to see this new wave in Spain politics, also what we were discussing before with the boat, with Aquarius, very wise and very, not ambitious, but courageous decisions he is doing. And I do hope there will be also some understanding for difficult questions such as Catalonia or Kosovo. On the other hand, what is happening, that the new government will bring some more democracy in the society.
Finally, I know you're short of time today, is that the Western Balkans are an issue which is often overlooked because of so many other crises in Europe, but the Western Balkans typifies what happens next for Europe. Accession proceedings, Albania in particular, what's going to happen next?
This is the issue that deeply touches my heart because I'm coming from the region. These countries need to go with the reforms and we have to have a dialogue with them. Macedonia made a breakthrough with very wise, together with Greece, wise and courageous politicians after 27 years. I don't understand those nationalists that today argue the agreement. Who could do it better? So now it's on the hands of the EU governments to recognize this achievement on the name issue, to open accession negotiations to Macedonia, also to Albania that did a very difficult justice reform, to recognize. Otherwise, we are as European Union leaders losing the credibility. And then we can forget about the region. So I do hope that there will be also this wisdom. If we promise something, we have to deliver.
I spoke with Paolo Rangel earlier today also, and he spoke about the need for a new Marshall Plan for Europe. Are you in for a new Marshall Plan for Europe?
We certainly need to have a deep discussion what do we want, in what kind of Europe we want to live, and I really see that we have common interests on very big topics, not many of them, but we have to focus on them, whether it's security, whether it's migration, economy, jobs, research, investments. These are things that unite us in a globalized world, and this is the way forward.
And finally, next year's elections, there will be a populist rise. I think most people are certain of that. Do you think populists can take the European Parliament chamber as a majority, or do you think the centre ground is going to hold regardless?
Nothing is excluded. I don't know what will happen. I do hope that we also as socialists and democrats, we will manage to pass through with our messages. We want Europe that is safe for European citizens, but that it's open, tolerant and progressive, and this is the way forward for me.
Tanja Fajon, thank you.